Hello, my name is Damien, the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad, and host of the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. Wherever you are, whatever time of day it is for you, and whatever you happen to be doing, I hope you enjoy.
So far from lies and hypocrisy, with thirst to energy, and silence make us breathe. Don't ask me the reason why. Just say, I only dream in black and white. Future's nothingness, but I can choose another end. Opening my eyes, and you beginning in my life. Without emptiness to feel, I am sure of myself. No mercy until the end.
Alright, sorry about that. I forgot to mention that this is part of Atheist Reads The People of the Abyss by Jack London. Feel free to head over to the YouTube channel for the podcast, and you'll see, obviously, the other 7 parts all in its own playlist, as well as a dozen other books that I'm reading in various stages of procrastination. And the background music is from Victim of Illusion, who are pretty awesome guys to deal with and to listen to as well. So head on over to victimofillusion.bandcamp.com and you will you can pick up their latest album for a handful of euros. So anyway, so yes, this is part 8 of Atheist Reads The People of the Abyss, and this section is called, so this is chapter 9, called The Spike. So just a brief rundown of the previous chapter. The previous chapter was where Jack London and 2 of his companions had gone from one workhouse. They got rejected, and so they're now on the way to another workhouse to try and get in before cut-off time, basically. And a lot of the chapter was about how businesses, the employment practices of how employers treated casual labour, so stuff like that. So this is chapter 9, The Spike. And so, yeah, anyway, with a click of the fingers, and yeah, so enjoy the background music. Let me know if it gets a bit too much, but yeah, that's, actually, where is the background music? There should have been some background music. There you go, there's some background music. Victim of Illusion. Enjoy. So 3, 2, 1. First of all, I must beg forgiveness of my body for the vileness through which I have dragged it, and forgiveness of my stomach for the vileness which I have thrust into it. I have been to the spike, and slept in the spike, and eaten in the spike. Also, I have run away from the spike. After my 2 unsuccessful attempts to penetrate the Whitechapel casual ward, I started early and joined the desolate line before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They did not let in till 6, but at that early hour I was number 20, while the news had gone forth that only 22 were to be admitted. By 4 o'clock there were 34 in line, the last 10 hanging on in the slender hope of getting in by some kind of miracle. Many more came, looked at the line, and went away, wise to the bitter fact that the spike would be full up. Conversation was slack at first, standing there, till the man on one side of me and the man on the other side discovered that they had been in the smallpox hospital at the same time, though a house full of 1,600 patients had prevented them becoming acquainted. But they made up for it, discussing and comparing the more loathsome features of their disease in the most cold-blooded, matter-of-fact way. I learned that the average mortality was 1 in 6, that one of them had been in 3 months and the other 3 months and a half, and that they had been rotten with it, where my flesh began to creep and crawl, and I asked them how long they'd been out. One had been out 2 weeks, and the other 3 weeks. Their faces were so badly pitted, though each assured the other that this was not so, and further, they showed me in their hands and under the nails the smallpox seeds still working out. Nay, one of them worked a seed out for my edification, and pop it went, right out of his flesh into the air. I tried to shrink up smaller inside my clothes, and I registered a fervent, though silent hope that it had not popped on me. In both instances, I found that the smallpox was the cause of their being on the DOS, which means on the tramp. Both had been working when smitten by the disease, and both had emerged from the hospital broke, with the gloomy task before them of hunting for work. So far, they had not found any, and they had come to the spike for a rest up after 3 days and nights on the street. So, what we can see here is that, the fact that someone falls sick and they're no longer able to work, and there's no public charity afforded these people in order to, get what they need to get by. So it's, I suppose, a condemnation of the society of the time that, these people just could not. How can I say? They've been out 3 weeks, they've been out barely a month, and they have to stand in line at a workhouse in order to try to find work and get by. And well, the problem though is that they're not going to make any money out of this. All they're doing it for is for a night's accommodation, so 2 nights accommodation, and a few meals. So the difference between them being here and not being here is, so they don't come out ahead financially, but at least they get, meals, and meals and a bath and a place to sleep. Though what quality that is still to be determined. But yeah, it's the other thing is that they were in hospital for months, and this is I suppose this is the thing that, to me, if there was an all-knowing God who was able to communicate with people on how to cure certain diseases, then I don't think he would have left up to humans to do it. Then this, to me, okay, I may be showing some anti-Christian bias here, or whatever you want to call it, but yeah, just the fact that, this is society where people in hospital 3 months at a time, and now it is unheard of for people to be in hospital with smallpox. Like, I don't know anyone who's had smallpox. And it's just interesting that, it's, anyway, so I'm prattling on a little bit. I'll continue on the book, because this chapter has a few pages in it. So anyway, let me turn the music back up, and let's get ready. It seems that not only the man who becomes old is punished for his involuntary misfortune, but likewise the man who is struck by disease or accident. Later on, I talked with another man, Ginger, we called him, who stood at the head of the line, a sure indication that he had been waiting since 1 o'clock, A year before, one day, while in the employ of a fish dealer, he was carrying a heavy box of fish, which was too much for him. Result? Something broke, and there was the box on the ground, and he on the ground beside it. At the first hospital, whither he was immediately carried, they said it was a rupture, reduced the swelling, gave him some Vaseline to rub on it, kept him for 4 hours, and told him to get along. But he was not on the street more than 2 or 3 hours when he was down on his back again. This time, he went to another hospital and was patched up. But the point is, the employer did nothing, positively nothing, for the man injured in his employment, and even refused him a light job now and again when he came out. As far as Ginger is concerned, he is now a broken man. His only chance to earn a living was by heavy work. He is now incapable of performing heavy work, and from now until he dies, the spike, the peg, and the streets are all he can look forward to in the way of food and shelter. The thing happened, that is all. He put his back under too great a load of fish, and his chance for happiness in life was crossed off the books. Several men in the line had been to the United States, and they were wishing that they had remained there, and were cursing themselves for their folly in ever having left. England had become a prison to them, a prison from which there was no hope of escape. It was impossible for them to get away. They could neither scrape together the passage money, nor get a chance to work their passage. The country was too overrun by poor devils on that lay. I was on the seafaring man who lost his clothes and money tack, and they all condoled with me and gave me much sound advice. To sum it up, the advice was something like this: to keep out of all places like the Spike. There was nothing good in it for me. To head to the coast and bend every effort to get away on a ship. To go to work, if possible, and scrape together £1 or so, with which I might bribe some steward or underling to give me a chance to work my passage. They envied me my youth and strength, which would sooner or later get me out of the country. These they no longer possessed. Age and English hardship had broken them, and for them, the game was played and up. So, yeah, wow, this is... So yeah, living in an age of work cover or workplace accident insurance, or just stuff like that. It's just really, I suppose, interesting that how I suppose lucky we have it. That so I'm just trying to process this as I'm reading it for the second time. And yeah, all it took was one accident and an employee who didn't care. And now, this guy has to basically be homeless for the rest of his life. And that shows both the lack of caring and the lack of, the lack of charity and the lack of caring by the people of the authorities of the time. So it's just so I'm just quickly type a message out. So I'm just actually typing something out. Cool. All right. So, why? It's just So I'm just thinking as the music's playing and what to really say, except thank God for the protections that we have in this time. And yes, it costs a little bit more in taxes and it costs a little bit more in bureaucracy and all that, but in a way, like I read this and I go, oh my God, thank God for the protections that we have, and thank God for the union movement. Because they fought hard for these protections that we have now. And so Alright, so what I'll do is I'll get back to the book. So turn the music up. There was one, however, who was still young, and who, I'm sure, will in the end make it out. He'd gone to the United States as a young fellow, and 14 years residence, the longest period he'd been out of work was 12 hours. He'd saved his money, grown too prosperous, and returned to the mother country. Now, he was standing in line at the Spike. For the past 2 years, he told me, he'd been working as a cook. His hours had been from 7 AM to 10:30 PM, and on Saturday to 12:30 PM. Sorry, from 7 AM to 10:30 PM, and on Saturday to 12:30 PM. 95 hours a week, for which he had received 20 shillings, or $5. But the work and long hours was killing me, he said, and I had to chuck the job. I had a little money saved, but I spent it living and looking for another place. This was his first night in Spike, and he'd come in only to get rested. As soon as he emerged, he intended to start for Bristol, a 110-mile walk, where he thought he would eventually get a ship for the States. But the men in line were not all of this caliber. Some were poor, wretched beasts, inarticulate and callous, but for all that, in many ways very human. I remember a carter evidently returning home after the day's work, stopping his cart before us so that his young hopeful who had run to meet him could climb in. But the cart was big, the young hopeful little, and he failed in his several attempts to swarm up. Whereupon, one of the most degraded-looking men stepped out of the line and hoisted him in. Now, the virtue and the joy of this act lies in that it was a service of love, not hire. The carter was poor and the man knew it, and the man was standing in the spike line and the carter knew it. And the man had done the little act, and the carter had thanked him, even as you and I would have done and thanked. Another beautiful touch was that displayed by the hopper and his old woman. He'd been in line about half an hour when the old woman, his mate, came up to him. She was fairly clad for her class, with a weather-worn bonnet on her grey head and a sacking-covered bundle in her arms. As she talked to him, he reached forward, caught the one stray wisp of the white hair that was flying wild, deftly twirled it between his fingers, and tucked it back properly behind her ear. From all of which one may conclude many things. He certainly liked her well enough to wish her to be neat and tidy. He was proud of her, standing there in the spike line, and it was his desire that she should look well in the eyes of the other unfortunates who stood in the spike line. But last and best, and underlying all these motives, there was a sturdy affection he bore her. For man is not prone to bother his head over neatness and tidiness in a woman for whom he does not care. Nor is he likely to be proud of such a woman. And I found myself questioning why this man and his mate, hard workers, I knew from their talk, should have to seek a pauper lodging. He had pride in his old woman, and pride in himself. When I asked him what he thought I, a greenhorn, might expect to earn at hopping, he sized me up, and said that it all depended. Plenty of people were too slow to pick hops and made a failure of it. A man, to succeed, must use his head and be quick with his fingers, must be exceeding quick with his fingers. Now, he and his old woman could do very well at it, working the one in between them and not going to sleep over it, but then they'd been at it for years. I had a mate who went down last year, spoke up the man. It was his first time, but he come back with £2.10 in his pocket. And he was only gone a month. There you are, said the hopper, a wealth of admiration in his voice. He was quick. It was just naturally born to it, he was. £2.10, $12.50, for a month's work. which one is just naturally born to it. And in addition, sleeping out without blankets and living the Lord knows how. There are moments when I'm thankful that I was not just naturally born a genius for anything, not even hop picking. In the matter of getting an outfit for the hops, the hopper gave me some sterling advice, to which same give heed, you soft and tender people, in case you should ever be stranded in London town. If you ain't got tins and cooking things, all as you can get'll be bread and cheese, no bloomin' good that. You must have hot tea and vegetables and a bit of meat now and again, if you're going to do work as is work. Can't do it on cold whittles. Tell you what you do, lad. Run round the morning and look in the dustpans. If I'm plenty of tins to cook in, 5 tins. Wonderful good some of them. Me and the woman got ours that way. He pointed at the bundle she held, while she nodded proudly, beaming on me with good nature and consciousness of success and prosperity. This overcoat is as good as a blanket, he went on, advancing the skirt of it that I might feel its thickness. And who knows, I might find a blanket before long. Again, the old woman nodded and beamed, this time with a dead certainty that he would find a blanket before long. I call it holiday hopping, he concluded rapturously. A tidy way of getting 2 or 3 pounds together and fixing up for winter. The only thing I don't like, and he was the riff within the lute, is paddling the oof down there. It was plain the years were telling on this energetic pair. And while they enjoyed the quick work with the fingers, paddling the oof, which is walking, was beginning to bear heavily upon them. And I looked at their grey hairs, and ahead into the future 10 years, and wondered how it would be with them. I noticed another man and his old woman join the line, both of them past 50. The woman, because she was a woman, was admitted into the spike, but he was too late, and separated from his mate, was turned away to tramp the streets all night. Okay, so interesting there that even though these people are poor and hard done by and living out on the streets, there is still some generosity in the way they go about and do things and treat each other and all that. Which is the contrast to earlier in the book where the people back in the I suppose in low class housing, they were, how can I say, they were beating each other up and screaming with the kids and all that kind of stuff. But then these people who had nothing were there to work and do the best they can at their work in order to get by. And so, and it is interesting that sometimes having that good attitude about what you're doing can make a difference between it sucking and totally sucking. Not that I claim to be, giving life advice at this moment, but yeah, it's just that I'm just noticing that. Oh, hello, got a message. Yeah, let me see what the message says. Just from my sister-in-law. I sent some photos of the kids, and so I'm just typing out. Okay, cool. So that's okay. Nothing in the work email. That's so yeah. And then now I'm not saying that having an entrepreneurial attitude will definitely get you out of poverty, but I'd say it certainly helps. But also that how can I say? It does make things better, and having that partner just really, really helps as well. But it is interesting why they let the woman into the spike and not the man. And I'm just wondering if there's some sort of sexism that is going on, where they're letting the woman in just so they can leer at her or say crude things to her or stuff like that. And I'm just very curious about things like that. So anyway, let's get back to the book. The street on which we stood, from wall to wall, was barely 20 feet wide. The sidewalks were 3 feet wide. It was a residence street. At least workmen and their families existed in some sort of fashion in the houses across from us. And each day and every day, from 1 in the afternoon till 6, our ragged spike line is the principal feature of the view commanded by their front doors and windows. One workman sat in his door directly opposite us, taking his rest and a breath of air after the toil of the day. His wife came to chat with him. The doorway was too small for two, so she stood up. Their babe sprawled before them, and here was a spike line, less than a score of feet away. Neither privacy for the workman, nor privacy for the pauper. About our feet played the children of the neighbourhood. To them, our presence was nothing unusual. We were not an intrusion. We were as natural and ordinary as the brick walls and stone curbs of their environment. They had been born to the sight of the spike line, and all their brief days they had seen it. At 6 o'clock, the line moved up, and we were admitted in groups of 3. Name, age, occupation, place of birth, condition of destitution, and the previous night's doss were taken with lightning-like rapidity by the superintendent. And as I turned, I was startled by a man thrusting into my hand something that felt like a brick, and shouting in my ear, "Any knives, matches, or tobacco?" "No, sir," I lied, as lied every man who entered. As I passed downstairs to the cellar, I looked at the brick in my hand and saw that by doing violence to the language it might be called bread. By its weight and hardness, it certainly must have been unleavened. The light was very dim down in the cellar, and before I knew it, some other man had thrust a pannikin into my other hand. Then I stumbled onto a still darker room, where there were benches and tables and men. The place smelled vilely, and the sombre gloom and the mumble of voices from out of the obscurity made it seem more like some anteroom to the infernal regions. Most of the men were suffering from tired feet, and they prefaced the meal by removing their shoes and unbinding the filthy rags with which their feet were wrapped. This added to the general noisomeness, while it took away from my appetite. In fact, I found that I made a mistake. I had eaten a hearty dinner 5 hours before, and to have done justice to the fare before me, I should have fasted for a couple of days. The pannikin contained skilly, 3/4 of a pint, a mixture of Indian corn, and hot water. The men were dipping their bread into heaps of salt scattered over the dirty tables. I attempted the same, but the bread seemed to stick in my mouth, and I remembered the words of the carpenter: "You need a pint of water to eat the bread nicely." I went over into a dark corner, where I'd observed other men going and found the water. Then I returned and attacked the skilly. It was coarse of texture, unseasoned, gross, and bitter. This bitterness, which lingered persistently in the mouth after the skilly had passed on, I found especially repulsive. I struggled manfully, but was mastered by my qualms, and 6 mouthfuls of skilly and bread was the measure of my success. The man beside me ate his own share, and mine to boot, scraped the pannikins, looked hungrily for more. Sorry about that, just had to quickly deal with something. Anyway, back to the, I'll give it 5 more minutes. I met a townie, and he stood me too good a dinner, I explained. And I haven't had a bite since yesterday morning, he replied. How about tobacco? I asked. Will the bloke bother with a fellow now? Oh no, he answered me. No bloomin' fear. This is the easiest spike going. You ought to see some of them. Search you to the skin. The pannikin scraped clean. Conversation began to spring up. This superintendent here is always writing to the papers about us mugs, said the man on the other side of me. What does he say? I asked. Oh, he says we're no good at a lot of blackguards and scoundrels as won't work. Tells all the old tricks I've been learning for 20 years, and which I've never seen a mug ever do. Last thing of his I see, he was telling our mug gets out of the spike with a crust in his pocket. Then when he sees a nice old gentleman coming along the street, he chucks the crust into the drain and borrows the old gent's stick to poke it out. And then the old gent gives him a tanner. A roar of applause greeted the time-honoured yarn, and from somewhere from the deeper darkness came another voice, orating angrily. Talk of the country being good for Tommy, which is food. I'd like to see it. I just came up from Dover, and bless the little Tommy I got. They won't give you a drink of water, they won't, much less Tommy. There's mugs never go out of Kent, spoke a second voice. They're bloomin' fat all along. I come through Kent, went on the first voice, still more angry. And God blimey, if I see any Tommy, then I always notices as the blokes talks about how much they can get when they're in the spike and eat my share of skilly, as well as their bleeding own. There's chaps in London, said a man across the table from me, that get all the Tommy they want and never think of going to the country. Stay in London the year round. Nor do they think of looking for a kip, place to sleep, till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. The general chorus verified the statement. But they're blooming clever, them chaps, said an admiring voice. Alright, cool, so I'm going to end the reading there. So this is a pretty long chapter, so let me put a bookmark on this page. And anyway, until next time, look after yourselves, stay safe. If you want to check out more of what I do, head on over to anchor.fm/TFADad. Contact me on Twitter at TFADpod, Facebook at TFADpod. Head over to www.tallfriendlyatheist.com, and if you want to support me financially, head on over to patreon.com/TFADpod. Otherwise, till next time, look after yourselves.
I am sure of myself. No mercy.